If it is that we don't reintroduce corporal punishment, the situation will continue to perpetuate and raise criminals in our nation's schools. We are not here today because the situation is getting out of control. It is already out of control. Now, the opposition firmly trusts the teachers and their competence and their ability, as Trinidad and Tobago has one of the top schools in nearly every CSEC and CAPE level examination. Thus, don't we need to give them a sanction in place that will allow them to discipline the unruly children and their violent behavior? Madam Speaker, I don't see how the government can call themselves a government and see how implementing this motion is for the betterment of the society, the nation, and in turn the children.
Honourable members, the speaking time for the Honourable Member for Talparo has expired. The Honourable Minister of Land and Marine Resources.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If it were not because of the safety and the future of our nation's youth, I would have taken my seat, having said absolutely nothing like the members from on that side. But lives are at stake. And I want to just remind the members on that side that when they come to this chamber, to take into consideration that your motion is outfitted with legal language that can be challenged by law and not left up to personal interpretation. And therefore, Honourable Speaker, Madam Speaker, I wish to bring to you that the motion really outlines 4 critical issues. The first of which is that the government revisit the Children Act, a universal act of which we are all signatories to, of which we have all vowed our allegiance to safeguard the future of our children, in which it's stated with grammatical profundity that discipline must be in keeping with the dignity of the child. Revisit that act to change it so that that side of the house would embarrass and bring into disrepute the intellectual history of this honored house. I'm going into the legal language here. Reintroduce corporal punishment. Madam Speaker, if I were to take my child to a school, I don't know if it will become necessary for me to fill out a form saying that the color of the child's eye is blue and the skin ability to take risks is 2 degrees or 2%. What rule of measure will be used to ensure that that sense of discipline, that primitive, tribal, barbaric kind of discipline does not allow for abuse? Madam Speaker, I want this House to recognize that if we do that, what we are in fact doing is changing the paradigm of this said motion, which said bullying perpetuated by students. It will therefore be an act of bullying perpetuated by teachers and academic staffs. I end on, don't hold your breath. Additional methods to counter violence. Madam Speaker, we have sufficient methods. In fact, this government can boast that we have taken initiatives and put measures in place to ensure that by the year 2015 and ultimately by the year 2020, we have sufficiently trained and skillful and artistic teachers outfitting the 21st century classroom who have the sufficient skills and resources and skill sets to deal with problems that pertain to classroom engagement in a civilized and dignified manner. That is what we have done. So don't tell me about expulsion and detention and this, that. We now have a program that is mandatory in every institution, every tertiary institution, called classroom management strategies. Madam Speaker, I wish to also say that this house was once called the seat of democracy. And today, we are in government because somebody or some bodies of people recognize that we are the image that is best suited to be seated in the seats of democracy, not them on that side. You come looking nice, but we go show all who is gladiators in suits.
Standing Order 36-1, relevance.
Honourable members, I will just remind you all to keep within the scope of the debate, please. and according to Standing Order 7.1, the parliamentary proceedings are to be spoken in standard English. Honourable Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Blame it on my being from Tobago. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Member from across there said that the old ways work. But to me, it sounds as if it might serve them well to have computers removed from outfitting the 21st century classroom because the old way worked. It seems to me, Madam Speaker, that we should go back to slavery, where the power to beat and abuse is known as the standard and the natural course of justice because the old way works. It seems to me, Madam Speaker, that the terminology of disciplinary measures.
Honourable members, the speaking time for the Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honourable member be extended by a further 3 minutes.
Honourable members, the question is that the speaking time of the Honourable Member for Barataria San Juan be extended by 3 minutes. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will hasten to my point because time perhaps isn't serving me well. But according to the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, it says that whereas the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and I will hasten to my point, recognize the dignity of the human person and the equal and inalienable rights with which all members of the human family is endowed by their Creator. If we were to allow this motion to pass today, ma'am, we not only will be in violation of the law, but we will be taking into siege the future of this great republic. To me, Madam Speaker, that sounds like an intellectual coup trying to take over this house. Madam Speaker, I wish also to bring your attention to, in 2000, when this was abolished, there was a statement on human rights and equal opportunities which says that discipline must be in keeping with the dignity of the human person. Madam Speaker, if we only allow ourselves to embrace such emotion, then not only will our children not have a beautiful Trinidad and Tobago to inherit, but we will have as a legacy something which we cannot be proud of. And this government is not for that. Thank you, Madam.
Member for Kumuto Manzanella.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, corporal punishment is an official punishment for the misbehavior by school children, but punishment for misbehavior by school children involving striking, whipping, and caning these children in a generally methodical and premeditated ceremony. It usually administered across the buttocks or on the hands. Madam Speaker, corporal punishment serves as a deterrent.
36, the members reading from script.
Honourable members, I may remind you all not to read from your speech. Honourable Member, you may continue.
Save the child's future. Corporal punishment is not abuse. Corporal punishment increases productivity and efficiency in an economy. Corporal punishment is also supported by the Bible. Madam Speaker, it instills an incentive to other students that their bad actions and misbehavior can be solved through corporal punishment. The fear of being whipped or canned, Madam Speaker, this disciplinary method is to instill respect and discipline among these students, Madam Speaker.
Will the member be willing to give way?
Yes, you may.
Is the honourable member encouraging the use of fear being instilled into the fragile and malleable mind of a child?
The honourable member of Faizabad, this fear is to instill discipline and respect in these students. To teach these students there are consequences for their actions. Madam Speaker, when a nation develops through respectable citizens, it also contributes to a greater and efficient economy. Madam Speaker, if these children are being properly trained from schools, attaining respect and discipline, they go into the workplace carrying on the same level of attitude and order. Madam Speaker, I know I'm speaking about corporal punishment in schools, but it directly relates back to whipping any bad habits in the early childhood of a child life. It's acceptable as it saves them from the same mistakes and unforgiving, cruel adult world. It also quoted in the Bible that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, and the road of correction will drive it far from him. Madam Speaker, I would like to conclude by saying we cannot bend an old tree, but we can mold a young plant. Thank you.
The Honorable Minister of Tobago Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for us to understand the negative implications of reintroducing corporal punishment, we must understand the mind of the child. Corporal punishment creates embarrassment, which in turn creates resentment towards the teacher and towards authority. This resentment will manifest itself into violent and aggressive behavior, which is the same problem that the opposition claims the reintroduction of corporal punishment will fix. Madam Speaker, teachers are humans like you and I, with human emotions and human problems. If they are given the authority to corporally punish students, they will use this as an opportunity to vent their frustrations and their anger on the unsuspecting student. And I draw reference to a case in the Sevilla Private Primary School.
Will the Honourable Member give way?
I am sorry, my time is far spent, and I must most regrettably say no. Madam Speaker, and I must draw reference to a case in the Sevilla Private Primary School where a teacher grabbed a student by the back of his hair and slammed his head against the desk. How do I know, Madam Speaker? Because I was there. Madam Speaker, we can obviously see that we cannot trust teachers to know how much is too much. Madam Speaker, reintroducing corporal punishment is like taking the leaves off of a dangerous weed, but not uprooting it. Corporal punishment is not the sickness. It is a symptom. A symptom of the deep-rooted ills that face our school population, such as peer pressure, broken homes, and violence in the homes. We must seek to address these deep-rooted problems and not simply put a plaster over it. Madam Speaker, anybody who supports the reintroduction of corporal punishment runs the risk of exposing their laziness in dealing with these deep-rooted social problems that face our young people. Madam Speaker, the members on the opposite side talk about training teachers. Training teachers, many of whom are old and set in their ways. Madam Speaker, you cannot teach an old dog, new tricks. Madam Speaker, the member on the floor.
Is the member willing to give way?
Sure.
I ask you as a member of the government, what are you doing to combat these social ills?
What are we doing to combat the social ills? We have set up other methods of dealing with school discipline, such as suspension and expulsion, as well as setting up suspension centers where students can go, and homework centers where students can go after school and take them away from the negative environment so that they can be mentored and deal with the specific problems that they may be facing. Madam Speaker, the member on the opposite side sought to use the Bible in order to back up his argument. Madam Speaker, in a multicultural multi-ethnic and multi-religious society such as ours, how could you possibly want to use the Bible? Madam Speaker, we must understand that corporal punishment was removed for a reason. It was seen as a retrograde and barbaric way of dealing with violence and bullying in our schools. And as we propel our country into a bright future, let us look for new and innovative ways of dealing with our problems, not go back to the old and outdated. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Point of Peer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning to you and all members in this House. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Education and the Honorable Member for Faizabad, the member mentioned that we have a crime problem in this country, Madam Speaker. She even mentioned that. And they want to say no against reintroducing corporal punishment in schools. Okay, Madam Speaker. And the Honorable Member for Barataria San Juan, he used the words beat and abuse. Really, Madam Speaker? Beat and abuse? Then if that is how they describe corporal punishment, Madam Speaker, it's obvious they don't even know what corporal punishment is. Madam Speaker, when we put the motion forward to reinstate corporal punishment, we are not going in schools to beat students till they bleed, Madam Speaker. It's a form of discipline, Madam Speaker. And the Honorable Member for Oropouche West, he mentioned when asked by my colleague from La Hokita, when asked what methods are they putting in place, he said suspension, expulsion, homework centers. I want to remind the member for Oropouche West, those methods are already in play, and I have news for you, it doesn't work. Madam Speaker, since the abolishment of corporal punishment by this government in the year 2000, we have seen a noticeable increase in crime, in school violence, in bullying, and all of these stems from the school because teachers don't have the authority to discipline students anymore, Madam Speaker. So what do you expect is going to happen? Madam Speaker, we have a crime situation so terrible that it is a rare sight now to actually see a Form 1 student enter any given secondary school and actually complete his education up to Cape without being stabbed, bullied, threatened, or go through some sort of mental suffering or physical suffering, because that is the situation our schools are in today, Madam Speaker. Students are not safe.
Will the member be willing to give way?
Yes.
You say mental and physical suffering, Mr. Member for Point of Peer. But need I remind you that corporal punishment does have the capability of turning into physical and mental suffering.
Corporal punishment, I will say again, Honorable Member for Faizabad, it is not to instill fear, or it's not to instill scarring, mental scarring, or physical scarring as a matter of fact. And I'll bring some facts later on, Member. Madam Speaker, please allow me to make my reference point using some newspaper articles, because the crime situation is so terrible right now that our schools, they actually breed these criminals in the sense of without disciplining students in a proper manner, Madam Speaker, those students then leave school and they go about thinking they could perform crimes, they could hold up people, they could beat students in schools and out of schools, Madam Speaker. Take, for example, please allow me to quote from the Newsday, Tuesday, October 8th, 2013. Stop the bullying in schools. And I quote, "There have been many incidents of school violence in this country, and it is time for the police service to get involved and reach out to students," said Acting Commissioner of Police Stephen Williams. The police has to be involved now, Madam Speaker. Another article, Madam Speaker. Friday, April 20th.
Honorable members, the speaking time of the honorable member for point of pay has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honorable member of Point 14 be extended to a further, point of pay be extended to a further 3 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that the speaking time of the honorable member for point of pay be extended by 3 minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues. As I was saying, Madam Speaker, Friday, April 20th, 2012, schoolboy beaten up. Newsday. A 14-year-old student of Pleasantville Secondary School had to be warded at San Fernando General Hospital after he was beaten by 2 other schoolboys on Wednesday evening while awaiting transportation outside the school's compound, Madam Speaker. And take this story, school violence prevalent, Saturday, June 11th, 2011. Education Minister yesterday admitted that violence among children at the nation's schools is prevalent, and the recent incident in which one female student of the Baratarian North Secondary School mercilessly beat another female student in a drain as disturbing, Madam Speaker. All these stories, ridiculous. We have a method to deal with these students. And Madam Speaker, this one interests me. $2 million has been donated to the Citizens Security Program by the Inter-American Development Bank to deal with the nation's school violence problem. And this was in when, Madam Speaker, Wednesday, February 9th, 2011. $2 million has been donated to the Citizens Security Program to help combat violence, help create a new routine for a new road for it. And where has that lead us? Look, we're in 2013, Madam Speaker, and so much violence. Now students are dying in schools. Madam Speaker, we have a serious, serious crime problem. And this problem could be easily solved. We need to reinstate corporal punishment, Madam Speaker. I would simply conclude by stating we are losing our nation's youth to the plague of violence, Madam Speaker. We are losing our teachers to indisciplined students, Madam Speaker. Ask yourself, Madam Speaker, how many more newspaper articles would you like to read involving with youths in crime and school violence, Madam Speaker, students losing their lives? Let's put an end to school violence. Support the move to reinstate corporal punishment. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Minister of National Security.
Madam Speaker, I have a dream. I have a dream that one day the members of the opposition will wake up from their dream and face the realities that are facing our nation's students and teachers in our schools. Madam Speaker, I urge the opposition to come down from their Mount Olympus and reason with us mere mortals as to the inadmissible rationale for this proposed motion. Because it is this government's, and by extension, the people of Trinidad and Tobago's stance that we do not want to counter the violence that is taking place in our nation's schools, but we want and will have it eradicated, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, I am not here to sue you with ostentatious vernacular, because we all here are well-learned individuals, well, for the majority at least. But I am here to inform my colleagues of the misconceptions as it relates to the violence in our nation's schools. And certainly, I can attest to the fact that the reintroduction of corporal punishment will not, and I repeat, will not combat the violence taking place in our nation's schools. Rather, if this motion is passed, there will be a subsequent upsurge of violence in our nation's schools. Now, I know this may seem, a bit far-fetched, but allow me to simplify this as much as possible for the opposition's sake. I think it is safe to say that we need a certain level of discipline in our nation's schools. But where the disparity lies is the extent or what type of discipline do we instill in our nation's schools. The problem, Madam Speaker, emanates from the fact that if we reintroduce corporal punishment in our nation's schools, this will do more harm than good, Madam Speaker, and the government is assured that this is a fact. I am baffled, genuinely, truly baffled, to the process of reasoning and logic that the opposition has in putting forth this motion today, Madam Speaker. This will not be the reintroduction of corporal punishment, as for our current generation, corporal punishment has never been the case. So the shock value of this paradigm shift will cause an upsurge in crime in our country. Madam Speaker, imagine in our school today, violence ensues when a student is verbally addressed or verbally disciplined. Can you imagine the upcries and violence towards teachers if a student is hit or chastised in any way? Madam Speaker, I'm not saying that we should be fearful of students or students should not be disciplined in any way, but corporal punishment is definitely not the answer. Madam Speaker, let's say hypothetically speaking that it was a bad idea to remove corporal punishment. What if that really and truly this was true, it was a bad idea to remove corporal punishment from our nation's schools? The problem is that in this current environment that we engage in, a reintroduction of corporal punishment would not be substantial to fix the violence within our nation's schools, Madam Speaker. I can only describe this motion as brilliant. Brilliant, Madam Speaker. A brilliant impersonation of the misinformed, a brilliant impersonation of ignorance, and a brilliant impersonation of what not to do.
Member is imputing improper motion. Is using offensive language, I apologize.
Honorable members, I remind you all not to use offensive language in the chamber. Honorable member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I must apologize.
Honorable members, the speaking time of the honorable member for Tobago has expired.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the speaking time for the honourable member be extended by a further 3 minutes.
Honorable members, the question is that the speaking time of the honorable member for Tobago be extended by 3 minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. Member, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, honestly, I sympathize with the opposition because I do see the need for a radical change in our school system. I do see the need for something to be implemented that would bring about this change that we are all looking for. But I must apologize to the opposition, Madam Speaker, because corporal punishment is definitely not the answer. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it is my duty as National Minister of National Security to ensure the safety of this country, to ensure the safety of every constituency, every teacher, and I can pledge that I will ensure the safety of our nation's children from the opposition that is trying to take away their effective and moral right to be creative and expressive within the classroom. Lastly, Madam Speaker, corporal punishment, or this notion that children must be beaten or forced into good behavior or not being violent, this notion, Madam Speaker, is irrelevant. Why, Madam Speaker? Because by a firm and guiding hand, the nation's children can be led out of the violence that is taking place today in our society. Not corporal punishment. By this firm and gentle hand, they will be straightened out and able to stand firm on their own, Madam Speaker. And if we introduce corporal punishment,